Welcome in to the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by our good friends at Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim, joined by my friend, Zach Gagan. Little different setup. We didn't know what to expect today. You know, last year was a very weird time in these parts with the Jaxson Robinson withdrawal news, and we were just kind of waiting. So we kind of in the back of our mind were like, yeah, you know, probably going to be another midnight-ish show. But thanks to Otega Oweh, he's, you know, going for the matinee, going for the matinee announcement, deciding that he will be returning to the University of Kentucky for his senior campaign. A decision that I don't think there was a lot of suspense. I don't think there was ever a lot of worry around Lexington, but that will never, ever minimize, Zach, the importance of this decision. How are you feeling right now, Zach Gagan?
Dude, I had cold chills like immediately for the first 5 minutes. Then I kept watching all of the videos that Oweh was posting. He did the old Wolf of Wall Street thing, which is just becoming like, if you're going to announce any sort of return in sports now, you have to use the Wolf of Wall Street clip, and it hits every time. So I've been ecstatic ever since the news broke. This was, like you said, we kind of knew it was coming, but now that it's actually happened and it's official, you can kind of take a nice deep breath and you can ignore all the, you know, oh, he had some good feedback and, you know, oh, it might not be as confirmed or as clear as we thought. You know, all that. It sounds, even Oweh in his ESPN quotes with Javoni was saying that, like, yeah, I got some great feedback, you know, but basically they all said, you should probably go back to college. So now you've got a potential preseason SEC Player of the Year, probably a preseason All-American candidate as well, kind of headlining year 2 with Mark Pope. You've got a 14-player deep roster now. It's just, it's very fun. It's very fun. It's hard not to smile when you think about Otega Oweh coming back for senior year 2 at Kentucky.
So, I guess we'll talk about what it means. Kentucky national championship contender, what the roster looks like as a whole. We'll talk about all that, obviously, and the importance of that. But just the decision itself, where, you know, you hear rumblings, and we've talked about it on this show, written about it, posted on the message board ad nauseum, that Kentucky just absolutely crushed the relationship portion of with Otega, the, you know, style of play, the system, the, you know, the just relationship building, things like that, where to take away the portal aspect of all of this was so massive, Zach, where, you know, had Otega Oweh hit the open market in the portal, he could have become the richest man in college basketball this upcoming season. I don't think that's hyperbolic to say. Like, I think there would have been, you know, knowing, okay, 16-point per game scorer, you know, all SEC talent, just kind of figuring himself out as a superstar, there was going to be a market for him to be basically a write your check, blank check, you know, name your price kind of player. So for Kentucky to do the heavy lifting throughout the season and basically make this guy who obviously had some shortcomings as an obvious pro, but say, hey, we're going to get you back for year 2, and you're, you know, right now this is just kind of laying the groundwork of, okay, you're a star, but your superstardom is going to really hit as a senior. So for Kentucky to check those boxes, and you hear even people close to Otega as the season's going on going, nah, it'll be Kentucky or NBA, you know, 0% chance of him hitting the portal. And then even talking about the NBA, just saying like, hey, I mean, Kentucky's taking care of him with money and, you know, with NIL, putting him in position to, you know, again, you know, make it worth his while to come back for a second season at Kentucky. I just think it's just an absolute bang up job on Kentucky's side to just make this a decision, an absolute no brainer. And I think the biggest tell out of all of this was Otega Oweh and his announcement today. He has long hair, which we knew that he cut his hair back on April 21st. And I don't know if you can look at the calendar right now, but it is May 28th. And his hair is completely shaved off today. But the video that he posted today was him with his long hair saying that he's staying home. So he's known for over a month that he's coming back to Kentucky. So no suspense whatsoever. But that's just a testament to the work Kentucky did behind the scenes to make that happen.
So you don't think that he made 2 videos? Like
no
an I'm leaving and an I'm staying? You think it was okay? I'm all for that. And
do you? I mean, I don't want to take that away from you. Do you think there's a chance that he did that?
I mean, why not? You might, if you're sitting there and you've already got it, you might as well make both just in case you go and kill it at the combine. But he probably, even in his mind, he probably knew the whole time. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm coming back. Because even at the very end, he's like, oh, that was cool. He's like, oh, that was nice, or whatever, something like that. So yeah, he probably knew the whole time that he was eventually coming back. But yeah, no point in not going through the entire process. And I think it was where he had the Nets workout today that you reported. That was like his final one. He ended up meeting a publicly confirmed meeting with like 5 or 6 teams. So he definitely got plenty of good feedback, I'm sure. He had the whole NBA draft combine. You get to do interviews and stuff with teams there. So I'm sure he was told everything that he needs to do to kind of take that next leap going into this year. And like you were talking about with the building good relationships, like we saw with guys like Boogie Flan and Jaxson to kind of a lesser extent because he was at kind of a smaller school going to Michigan. But like these guys go into the portal or like declare for the draft, and they're like, all right, maybe I don't know if I want to stay in college or not. But so they go into the portal as well. Like you said, Oweh didn't do that. So that's definitely a testament to how Coach Pope and the entire staff ran that operation. But it also makes sense from just a continuity standpoint where Oweh's going to have a few of his teammates back as well. It's probably just going to be a little bit easier for him to maybe take that leap, or make it, on paper at least, take that leap, because he's got the whole, he knows Lexington, he knows the coaches, he knows the players, the whole coaching staff is back too. That's kind of like an underrated part of all this as well. So it's definitely like he's put himself in a great position here to really make that jump to get himself into the first round. And I will admit, because I never probably got over like a 2% belief that he would actually leave or anything like that. But when over the last 2 days, when you see all these fringe guys, like second round possible guys pulling out, you're like, okay, well, someone has to get drafted like 55th overall. Like, it's not going to be, there's not 100 Bronny Jameses out there to just fill that last gap for the Lakers or whatever. So that part I was like, all right, there is an option for him to maybe sneak in, but it's clear that he wants that first round lock, because it doesn't matter if you're the 40th pick or the 55th pick, that money is not going to be Kentucky NIL money. Like you said, he could have, even with the opportunity to jump in the portal and get a blank check, I'm sure Kentucky probably gave him a blank check as well and said, hey, if you want to come back, here's the deal. So just awesome stuff all around. I don't even remember what you initially asked me, Jack, but we're just kind of rambling at this point talking about Otega.
That's what this is for. Like, it's just a time to celebrate and just kind of get our thoughts off, just get our takes off, even if they make no sense. Like that's what this is for. I want to read the quote that he gave, since it's the beyond the I'm not leaving that he posted on his Instagram story, but the actual quote itself that he gave ESPN about his decision to return. I got great feedback from NBA teams, but the consensus was to come back to school and have a great year. I want to try and get my stock up even more and put myself in position to win a national championship with all the possible accolades that come with that. We have the talent to be the #1 team in the country. A lot of guys who are hungry to make that jump and that intensity to go get national championship #9 for Kentucky. I'm excited to play with everyone. It will be a fun year. Daryl Bird did a great job getting Mark Pope's kind of final thoughts on Otega's decision before the announcement went public. But a lot of emphasis put on his heart and saying like, hey, if you're not totally invested in this, and, you're focused on like, man, what could have been, what ifs, I could have done just a little bit more to be in the NBA right now. Now I'm just kind of wasting my time in class for one more year as a college basketball player. Pope said, you need to follow your heart. If your heart is telling you that you're going to have those types of thoughts, we don't want you here anymore. But if you trust your heart and it says, hey, I want to win big, I want to make a ton of money, and I want to develop individually as a pro, come back to Kentucky and let's do this the right way. So all of those quotes kind of go hand in hand with like, hey, I want all that accolades that come with being, preseason SEC Player of the Year, preseason All-American, all those things, while also keeping the main thing, and that is winning championship #9. You saw Denzel Aberdeen saying, we got the pieces to win #9. A lot of the players, obviously the coaches are over the moon right now, but there just kind of has this growing, overwhelming belief across the board that like, hey, we're doing this. The reason why we're investing so much in this roster, the reason why we are 14 deep at this stage, is because this is a group that's capable of winning a national championship, and that's how it should be. That's exactly what Mark Pope said the first day he took the job, and that's what we wanted to hear.
I think the next thing you want to think about probably is, what does that leap look like? You know, what do we need to see from Oweh to have him actually take that leap? I think, yeah, he averaged 16 points a game last season. Is he going to be able to do that again with more talent around him? You know, probably spread around some more shots. Like, you know, he wants to show off his three-pointer some more, show off his decision-making, playmaking. Those are two things that he really wants to try and, you know, take that next step for. I think another thing he mentioned was, like, trying to show even more physicality as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what his leap actually looks like, because I could see a world where he doesn't average he averages less than 16 points a game, and he still ends up being better. Kentucky still ends up being better overall just because of the talent around him. But I think from a pure, you know, player standpoint, what do you think are kind of the main things? Because we saw at the Combine, he pretty much showed the exact same stuff that we saw at Kentucky. He didn't really show off anything new. So what are you kind of expecting to see, I guess, out of Oweh going into his second year? And actually, before you answer that, because Pope has really harped on the, you know, my second year guys always take the leap, and we've harped on that with Colin Chandler and Brandon Garrison in particular. We haven't really talked about that aspect of it with Otega Oweh. You know, what does a leap for a guy who's already averaging 16 points a game? What does that actually look like? And it's probably scaled back scoring, but what other areas of the game actually take a bump? You know?
Yeah, I think it's as a playmaker. I think, you know, Otega got tunnel vision at times and was so good at getting downhill and just had this, like, hey, I am scoring one way or the other, or I'm putting up a shot at the rim. No telling what's going to happen at the rim, but a shot is getting put up with my name attached to it. And I think kind of cleaning some of those things up, kind of broadening the court vision, and just kind of asserting himself as a playmaker and kind of figuring himself out as a playmaker, I think is going to go such a long way, you know, as a facilitator, doing some of those things. And, you know, I think a lot of normal fans look at the shot and go, well, you know, the hitch, and is there a way to clean that up? I don't think, you know, talking to people around Otega, talking to people around the program, I don't think that the goal is to change the shot mechanics necessarily, but there is something to be said about the windup and the timing and just trying to get that volume up with you know, instead of it kind of being a whole process to get a shot up, try to, you know, speed up the, you know, the timing of that shot. You know, those are just a couple other things. Some on-ball defense, you know, defensive things Pope talked about is you know, kind of a main point of emphasis. But, you know, it's such a testament to this decision and how substantial it is for the program, because his floor is so high as is that, you know, you're already saying, like, at absolute worst, you can pencil him in as a, you know, exactly what he was last year, a guy who's going to finish around the rim, who's going to get downhill and kind of bulldoze his way through against, you know, he was able to do it against the best league in the history of college basketball. He's going to be able to do that again next year.
Yeah.
So at absolute bare minimum, we know what he's going to be at his worst. But what is, you know, what that the raising the ceiling and some of those kind of nitpicky things that Mark Pope talked about, that's the difference between him being a first round pick. Like, I know it's kind of it seems crazy to think, okay, well, he's, you know, was barely touching the draft boards right now, 72 in the latest ESPN best available, you know, having him jump 30, 40 spots to get into that end of first round range next season. It's a big jump, but there's already so much to work with right now that you really don't have to clean up too much to get there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the playing off 2 feet thing was something that Pope mentioned weekly, it felt like, towards the end of the season with Oweh, trying to get him to just be a little bit more calm and more aware of, like, when he needs to make decisions. So I think that's probably one of the bigger things. And that goes to the playmaking as well, just being able to open up, just keep your options as open as possible. So that's something that I'll be really looking forward to see how he takes that extra leap. And it'll be nice to see. This is no shade at Lamont Butler at all, but Jalen Lowe is a better passer. He's a better facilitator. He can run an offense a little bit better than Lamont Butler can. So that'll be another factor as well of how can he get Oweh involved a little bit more. You know, are we going to, I think Oweh's, like, catch and shoot numbers weren't terrible. So how much is he going to try and spread the floor a little bit more as well? I know we've had people in the comments talking about, you know, what the actual shooting looks like for this team. You know, Oweh's still 35% last year, but he shot at a higher volume. So his free throw shooting was a lot better as well, 77.6%. So you can see kind of the ways that his actual shot can maybe improve. And like you said, at this stage in his career, in his basketball life, you don't want to like make wholesale changes to his shot. You don't want a whole Markelle Fultz situation, like at this point, it's just kind of refining it. Like you said, speeding it up, making it so instead of
Charles, look at that.
Charles, definitely tired. Thank you, seriously.
Charles, I love you.
Shout out to Charles.
I love you almost as much as Otega Oweh. Not as much, but close.
That's close. If Charles has a question he wants to ask, he should drop it in there and we'll answer
Absolutely.
it. So that's awesome. Yeah, and so instead of being like a 3-part shot where he kind of has like 2 different hitches into a shot, maybe just make that 2 parts or 2 processes to the shot. So we'll see how I'm sure Pope has a whole master plan of how he wants to incorporate Oweh and actually really take those extra leaps. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets his 11.5 shots per game that he did last year, because I don't think he will. I just don't think he'll need to. And I think that's what's going to make Kentucky awesome. Because if Otega Oweh is going to be your best player again, surrounded by, I don't know. I assume he'll probably be the best player. A lot of that depends on the Jaden Quayton stuff and all that. So we'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, if he's your best player, a senior year Otega Oweh, I think you've got all this talent surrounding him. The ceiling for the team is definitely a lot higher now than I think it was, before. If you had to reassess things and go after whatever is left in the portal, whatever bottom of the barrel scraps you're left out there. So
I think it leads directly to this conversation. Just where does this put UK in the preseason ranking? Thanks, Josh Smith, for that question. A lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of those kind of tweeners, the fringe guys, announcing their returns to their respective programs. While we were waiting for Otega, you get the Floridas of the world, you get the Houstons of the world, with so many of those like difference makers at the college level, but not quite a difference maker at the NBA level. Those guys all returning. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of balance out the top of the pecking order where Kentucky very obviously belongs? I mean, we have 14 high level. I mean, when your 14th man is a top 35 recruit nationally, like you clearly belong in the conversation. Where do they belong in the conversation, Zach? I think is the next place we got to go.
Yeah, and I definitely think it'll be a consensus top 15. It's just a matter of, where they put, wherever the pollsters put them going in. So, but I think if you're just looking top to bottom talent-wise, it's probably, I don't know every other roster by memory, top to bottom, but I would be hard-pressed to find 10 that are better than what Kentucky's going to be able to roll out there. It's just going to be a matter of how Pope is able to make all the pieces fit, how he's able to make it all work, keep everyone happy. I'm not a big believer in the is there enough basketballs to go around, especially when you've got a coach as competent and as good as Pope. I don't really think that's going to be too much of an issue, but I definitely think it allows you to start dreaming if you're a Kentucky fan, because like we've just talked about again, I mean, it's going to be hard to find a bunch of rosters that are better just talent-wise than Kentucky. So, and the SEC is going to be a little bit worse. You would think it will be a little bit worse, but that non-conference schedule is going to be really tough. We're going to find out pretty early on, kind of similar to this season, or this past season, just how good Kentucky is. I mean, you got Purdue and Georgetown coming, pretty much right off the bat. So you'll know pretty quickly how good Kentucky's going to be, what the ceiling is like. I think the floor is really high, though, and I think that's probably the more important part, is the floor is like better than last year's team, which made it to a Sweet 16. So I think there's reason to believe that you're looking at a pretty consistent top 10 team all season long here.
Yeah, and I think just the areas that needed to get cleaned up, when you look at the physicality, when you look at the the athleticism and the toughness and some of those questions that they clearly had the talent, but there were times that you kind of felt that they were capable of getting punked, and they did get punked on a couple of occasions. This is a group top to bottom that they just have this tough identity that they really, Pope did a good job of kind of addressing some of those concerns from last season, while also not having any clear liabilities on the floor where, yes, shooting is the obvious question mark. Do you have any Kobe Bryant? Well, no, you don't have any Kobe Bryant because he's a generational shooter, and
he's the best shooter in the draft.
Those don't come around so often. There's a reason why they're called generational to begin with. But every player on the floor at all times is going to be a capable shooter. And I think that's just enough to open the door for Mark Pope to get creative. And like, not having to work around anything with his system, like there were times that Amari Williams, clear non-shooter. There aren't going to be many of those opportunities this season where you have to work around, kind of a deficiency in any way. I mean, top to bottom, maybe not many 45% three-point shooters, but there aren't going to be any 26% three-point shooters that you kind of have to worry about. I don't know where the flaws are. Like, are there any glaring, like, okay, this is going to be, the detriment to this team. This is going to be because even like the injury conversation that we had last year, they even cleaned that up by signing 14 scholarship players.
Yeah, I think I don't really know where I stand on the 3-point shooting yet, just because
you got to see him, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jalen Lowe's going to take a leap in that regard. Colin Chandler's probably going to take a leap in that regard. We know that Cam Williams is already a sniper. So and Jasper Johnson, you don't really. His numbers have been good all throughout high school and AAU and all that, so you have reason to believe that he'll come in and be pretty good at that area. Trent Noah, however much he plays, you think he'll be able to shoot. Brandon Garrison's going to start shooting more, so we say. I think my biggest question mark would probably still be centers around the centers, actually, is how good does Brandon Garrison turn into? Does he take the leap? Is Jaden Quaintance's knee going to be ready in time? I think that's probably your only real question mark with this team right now is, okay, how good are the 5 men going to be? But then you can also counter that and say, well, you have options where you can play smaller. You can put Jelavic at the 5 if you want to. You have Diabate, who's this alien type 2 through 5 guy, so that you can play all over the floor. So there's areas they can kind of maybe shore that up a little bit, but I do think a lot of the actual ceiling of this team will depend on Jaden Quaintance's knee and the development that we see from Brandon Garrison over this coming summer, because we know what we're getting from Oweh. We imagine we're going to see leaps from some of these other guys, but even if they don't take these massive, I think Brandon Ramsey is a guy that's really been talking this up. It's like there's a group of 6 guys that can all take leaps. You really only need 2 or 3 of them, maybe, to actually do that, to where you can be okay, that mask some of the flaws there. So you're the hit rate on that doesn't have to be very, very high, but I do think it needs to be higher with guys like JQ and BG, just to see how much they can actually grow, because BG's going to have the ball in his hands a lot still, even with a guy like Jalen Lowe. Pope's still going to have a lot of his offense operate from guys at the top of the key. We saw Brandon Garrison do some up and down stuff with it, in that regard last season. Quaintance didn't do too much of that just because of what he was doing at Arizona State, but he has playmaking chops, so we'll see how that all plays out as well. But then you can, if break in case of emergency, you throw in Malachi Moreno or Reese Potter, who haven't really played at this level before, but you still have the options there that you can throw in spot minutes for 5 or 5,
what an
6,
insane thing to say, where you have a break in case of emergency 2 7-footers, one a McDonald's All-American and the other a really, really, really good talent from Miami of Ohio with 2 years of Division I experience is I mean, worst case scenario, let's throw him in there and figure something out. If everything else isn't working, we at least have what an insane scenario for Pope to put himself in.
I mean, this is going to be the most talented team Pope's had as a coach
ever.
It's not even remotely close. I'm sure he had some good BYU teams. Last year's team was obviously talented, but this is pure, 4 or 5 stars running up and down the roster. Not, again, no shade or anything, from Drexel and Dayton and all them, but you're getting guys that are coming from Alabama, who just did another Elite 8 run. You've got a national champion coming in,
all ACC talent from
all ACC. You've got a potential top 5 draft pick in Quaintance. So there's the talent is going to. I think that's probably what is making Pope super excited. He's all right, I can toy with so many different things here. So that'll be a lot of fun just to see how he actually wants to incorporate everything, because I think he's going to have a lot of fun with Jalen Lowe. I think that's going to be really fun to watch and see how he just has him push the pace, run up and down the floor, try and get guys open for threes. I don't know if they'll hit that 33-pointer mark that he keeps trying to want to get to, but I don't think they'll need to with this team. If you shoot 25 a game with this team and hit at the 35 mark again, you're going to be perfectly fine, because all the other areas are going to be improved.
Yeah, and like I think the shooting is going to be so overrated because they're going to be so much better defensively. They're going to be such better rebounders. There's like the areas of like that we have no fix. Like the team just is who they are in these areas where they were just such foundationally flawed. Those have been fixed. Where now it's like, okay, well, the difference between 25 3-point attempts and 30 and then 35 3-point attempts, like the difference between all that really doesn't matter as long as they're getting
when it's being made up in other areas.
Yeah,
it's fine.
This question from Jeff Jenkins, another kind of talking point that fans are throwing out there, just the backup point guard spot. Obviously, Jalen Lowe, a lot of reason to be excited there. As well-rounded as you can probably find in the portal, efficiency, serious concern, but as Pope has said ad nauseum, Pitt's
played at armpit.
Pitt stunk. Shout out Nick Roush.
Dude.
What an absolute haymaker of a headline there. Playing for Armpit, where he was just not very well coached, not a lot of talent, had to do a lot of bad things. He compared his situation.
He played 40 minutes a game at Pitt. He compared
his situation to Lamont Butler, where it was like Lamont's. He came in and his numbers were pretty ugly. Like you looked and was like, we're signing a guy that shot 59% from the free throw line. Oh no. And then Lamont ends up being Lamont Butler. So yeah, there's a lot of reason for optimism there. Who is Kentucky's backup point guard? Is it going to be a Denzel Aberdeen kind of staggering of minutes the way we kind of saw early on with Lamont and Kerr, where, we kind of got the second wave with Kerr and his guys as he's kind of the playmaker and disher outer, and then Lamont had his team on occasion. Is that going to be the setup? Does Jasper get some run? What about Colin Chandler and the kind of explosion we're expecting from him? How do you see the point guard situation playing out?
That I'm not as concerned about, just because of how Pope operates the offense, where, like we were talking about, a lot of it's going to run through some of the bigs as well. I'm sure Diabate will get some chances to kind of run things from the top of the key. He's a little bit of an underrated playmaker as well, but the system at Alabama was a little bit different than Kentucky's, even though they like to run and score a lot. So they'll do more stuff from like the top of the key and trying to get guys open through the zoom actions and all that. Colin Chandler will be interesting as a backup point guard, just because he, like the first 15 games of the season, you would think he didn't know how to dribble. And then slowly but surely he got better at it, just from confidence and playing more. So if he can really tighten that up, he could be easily a good option. Jasper Johnson has had the ball in his hands for 4 years now, like where he's been the guy. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. With Jasper, it'd be more about, is he gonna, how often does he chuck up a 28-footer instead of trying to get himself in the lane or get anybody else open? So, and Aberdeen did it for 4 games at Florida and averaged like 18 points a game during SEC play. Like
shot like 46% from 3.
Yeah, he was great. So, and he's a winner. Like that guy knows what he's doing. He's played. This will be his 4th year of basketball or college basketball as well. So, that area, I understand why, like there's just no obvious like number 1 lead guard behind Jalen. Like there's no
the way Kerr Kriisa was when they signed. It said, okay,
like you have to have Jaxson
that's your backup point guard.
Yeah. So you had to have guys kind of like mold themselves into makeshift point guards, and it ended up working for Kentucky, obviously, because Jaxson Robinson, if he didn't get hurt, he's probably going to get drafted, and he was probably going to get drafted because he was playing. Kobe Bryant showed off that he can play point guard at times. So there's reason to believe that area won't be as big of a concern, not because of, mainly because of how Pope operates the system. He's just going to have the ball in different guys' hands. I mean, hell, they could have Oweh bring the ball up. We saw Oweh bring the ball up plenty of times last year. So he can be a guy that can initiate the offense as well. And Pope will probably try and put him in situations to do that, just to show off, like, okay, if your playmaking is really taking this leap, we're going to have to put you in more situations where you can show it off and actually, contribute and make plays for Kentucky there. So I wouldn't be too concerned there, or at least me personally, not yet. I mean, who knows? Give me a month, I'll start finding reasons to be. It's Blake.
What BBN's good for, baby.
We still got 3 months of off-season talk to kind of consume ourselves with. So,
what is going to be the main thing we're waiting on this summer? We don't have you know, the roster is as full as you could possibly find. It's as talented as you could find. Like, what is going to be the thing that BBN is? It's got to be Jaden Quaintance' injury, right? Like, that's going to be the, well, how's he progressing? Well, we can't. We'll never be able to reach, Final Four expectations without an obvious return date for Jaden Quaintance. Is that going to be the go-to for BBN?
Yeah, only because the schedule is going to be so tough early on. If he's like 5 games in and Kentucky drops, one of the whatever really big games, or like maybe has a couple, kind of bad showings, like, oh, well, it would have been nice if Quaintance was healthy and all that. So we'll see how all that goes. I'm still kind of skeptical just of how quickly he can get over the ACL injury. If he can come back by September, then hell, that's great. If he's fully healthy and ready to run, then sure, let's go out there and let's ride. But I'm perfectly fine with maybe sucking up a couple of, or holding him back a little bit longer just so you can have the long-term benefits from him. But yeah, there's nothing really else to thank God we got TBT coming up, and I really like that Mark Pope is going to get to go to the Team USA stuff. Dude, doing that with Jasper and Malachi and all the other recruits there. What is it? It's like 8 of the 2026 guys that are there are like Kentucky targets. So that's going to be a lot of hands-on time with Pope, just getting face-to-face. So those will be kind of the things I'm sure we'll be talking about going on. And all this recruiting too. Let's see if this is, he can parlay this into maybe a big recruiting win on the trail and get himself one of these 2026 5 stars. Maybe that's what the Team USA camp will help push him to.
Yeah, those two things kind of giving us summer content and summer like just nuggets. Like, I just remember hearing the speculation about like, oh, how did Kentucky stack up against, the La Familia, and like how did those things go? And then you hear after the fact that Kentucky busted their ass in the the first time La Familia kind of had their way with the current team, but the follow-up performance was like, whoa, Kentucky shot lights out. And you just heard some of those whispers from Rupp Arena going, Kentucky might be better than we all imagine. I got a question for you in that regard. Who is going to be the guy coming out of those scrimmages? We're now a week away from players moving in. We already got Jaden Quaintance officially moved in. He's, started rehab and all those things. Exactly what you want to hear at this stage. Everybody else will be moving in over the next week or so. Who is going to be the guy or guys we hear about once those La Familia practices ramp up, there's summer workouts? Who's going to be the one that maybe the flying under the radar that maybe wasn't expected to be a name brand talent, a superstar talent that is, proving himself to be such in some of these early summer workouts?
I think Cam Williams was the first name that came to my mind. When you watch a lot of his Tulane tape, it's not like he was a freshman still, young freshman. Like, he was 17 for a bit of last season as well. He was on a Tulane team where he was kind of like, he was a starter, but more of like the 4th or 5th option guy. Like, didn't really initiate much offense or anything like that. But is just so skilled, long, really like just a great defender, like a lot of really good instincts. So I think you'll see some of that stuff show itself pretty early on, especially as everyone's trying to like kind of acclimate themselves, like kind of similar to Colin Chandler, where everyone was like, okay, this guy is clearly like insanely talented. But then he hadn't played basketball in 2 years still. So like when he got into game action, it just maybe took a little bit more. So, and I don't know how Cam Williams is going to look at Kentucky in his first year there. Like, mainly because of how much talent's around him and just because of the role he played last year at Tulane. Like, is he going to be kind of stuck in that like pure 3-and-D role? Or is Pope going to try and put him in situations where he can play more on ball? So I don't really know how that all will translate, but I think that when he's just initially playing and he's just out there hooping in the gym in practice, he's going to be the guy that's throwing down dunks on people and locking up, Otega Oweh or something. You'll hear his name probably pretty fast. And then whenever we get to these blue-white scrimmages and stuff like that, it wouldn't shock me at all if he comes out and just hits, buries a handful of threes. And you're like, okay, this guy can be really good. I don't know how it all will translate. Similar to with Colin Chandler, it took him a while to get rolling. But he just has all the tools to be such a really, really good player.
I am rolling with my guy, Andrea Jelavic.
Ooh, I thought you were going to say Jasper.
No. I got some stuff to say about Jasper too. But I've heard awesome things about Jelavic, man. Like, people that recruited him that, followed him closely and wanted him, pretty bad this past cycle. Talking to them about Jelavic and going like, man, that's going to be the guy that you guys have no idea how good he is, the impact that he is. Like, just talking about how polished and mature he is at this stage of his development, growing up, playing professionally, and that, just when you play in that league and winning, a winning tradition and culture, playing for the program that he has for as long as he has in an environment with other pros, like, it just does something to you where, like, with Z had more like pop and the potential and like, whoa, like we saw his debut against Georgia. There are times that Z is like, this is the number one pick. I can't believe that we got lucked out with this guy. But the floor is so much higher with Jelavic, and I've just heard awesome things that, like, he's going to step in and be a day one contributor where you're not going to have to worry about him making boneheaded mistakes. You're not going to have to worry about maturity issues. He's just a polished, advanced product for his age, and as a freshman at by American college standards, that he's going to be the guy that we're all talking about afterward, going like, whoa, like, we kind of talked about Jelavic as just kind of an afterthought. I think he's going to be the guy we're talking about at the end of the summer. And you brought up Jasper, and I do feel like he's kind of weirdly flown under the radar. We obviously got the big comments from Mark Pope saying that they expect him and kind of demand that he's going to need him to be a superstar. But don't discount the read and react kind of pickup style of play that OTE is and playing for RWE compared to Mark Pope's system, and just how everything is free flowing and read and react, and how that's going to translate for Jasper more quickly than maybe some of these other kids. I think Jasper played in the perfect environment for Mark Pope's system to kind of minimize the adjustment period, if you will. I think Jasper, the reason why they're talking so highly of Jasper is because they see him fitting into that the Jaxson Robinson role, where he's going to step in day one and hit catch and shoot shots. Like, he is going to be the guy that in transition, he is going to pop from 30 feet away and go, whoa, like, he just exploded for 25 points. Jasper Johnson is going to be a guy where he's going to have 10 games where he's going to explode and be total game changing scoring talent on the offensive end, and kind of working through the strength and conditioning program at those sorts of things. But Jasper, I think, has flown way, way, way under the radar because he's just kind of a offensive chucker kind of reputation. But I think that's going to work in his benefit better than if he had gone anywhere else in college basketball, Zach.
Yeah, he's still a top 20, 25 recruit. Like, I mean, we can kind of nitpick his game all you want, but Jasper Johnson's a really good basketball player. I want to touch on Jelavic just for 1 second, because I've gotten to watch a lot of his film over the last however many weeks. That kid wants to run. He wants to run up and down the floor. And I think that's really what Mark Pope likes about him, is on both sides of the ball. He really wants to run up and down the floor. He's got some nice little just natural instincts in transition, kind of knowing when to make the pass, when to slow down, things like that. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Another note on him is all of his teammates are coming here to play college next year, which I think speaks to the fact that kid's playing he's 21, just turned 21. He's playing with really good players who are already 20, who have already, I think, pretty much everyone that's on that team right now, or at least all the college kids that are coming to America next year, have make sure he's eating American food early. Yeah, get him adjusted. We don't want him to go to any wing places. But
what a ridiculous timeline that was.
That was
sorry, Z's out. He went to Wingstop and he's got
the tummy ups. He's got the upset tummies. But yeah, so you got all these kids they've all been in that same league for 2 years now, and it's a very talented league. Like, that team itself, I think, finished 8th in their standings. Like, they just snuck in. I think it was an 8-team playoff for the Adriatic League, and they were number 8. Like, they had like a 16-15 record or something like that. Lost to the top seed in their opening round of the playoffs. But so that just kind of goes to show you, is like Mega Super. What the hell's their name? Mega Superbet. It changes every time I look it up. I think it's Mega Superbet right now. Yep. That's their sponsor. But Mega Superbet, they've got all these talented kids that are coming here to play college for the Auburns and the Miamis and the Illinois, and they were the 8th best team in that league. So, and they had a bunch of vets on there too, you know, guys that were in their late 20s, you know, early 30s. So it's like that was a real grown man league. So he is going to be a fun watch, but he's not even like, for me, he's almost not even an under the radar guy. Like I'm almost kind of thinking, all right, this guy's going to come in and probably play 20 minutes right away. Because I think one thing that that I keep having to remind myself is the kid is 21 years old. Like he's not some, like I'm pretty
21-year-old freshman.
I don't know how old
he's competing with Colin Chandler as the old head freshman.
Yeah, these old underclassmen are in their early 20s. Zakai Ziegler is probably pissed about that. So
yeah, 95 years old, trying to get a job. Zakai, get a job. Trying to get another year of eligibility. Come on, dude. So. Come on, bro.
I know this is something that I'm gonna talk about in we're doing a Zoom action thing later on, but do we want to discuss the potential starting 5? Is that even a conversation?
It's a great conversation that we had a couple people.
I know, yeah, I know it's being
about
asked. So I haven't even thought about it yet, really, to be honest with you. I mean, I think I can pencil in a couple of guys immediately. Jalen Lowe and Otega are your like easy. You're
feel good about those two. I feel probably
good
your
about 3. It really doesn't matter, I guess, where Otega is playing. A lot of it is, you know, I'm just going to kind of assume that JQ is not 100% for is the Purdue or Georgetown game first? Do we know? I forget,
Purdue first, then Georgetown.
Yeah, so for the Purdue game, I'm just kind of anticipating that Quaintance isn't going to be ready to be 100%. So that's just my own, you know, I'm not wanting to get my hopes up essentially with him.
So that's probably a safe way to put it. Don't get your hopes up that he's going to be ready. Yeah. And so, be excited if he is.
If that's the case, then I'm probably plugging Brandon Garrison into the 5. But then it starts to get weird because, like I said, I really just talked to Jelavic a bunch. I think Diabate is going to be really tough to not start. Like, how can you not start a guy who's been a back-to-back Elite Eights? You know, just like a complete, absolute dog. Pope's been comparing him to Draymond Green all year or all offseason. Diabate literally said when his season ended with Alabama, he said, "I'm going to get what's mine." When he was asked about a starting role, so I think it'll be hard for him to not be plugged in as a starter. And at that point, it's like, all right, how do you want to kind of round things out? Like, let's say
he got his with money too, by the way.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, all these kids did. My goodness. So let's say you got Lowe, Oweh, Diabate, Garrison. You know, who the hell is filling in that last spot? Like, do you want it to be Jasper Johnson? Is it going to be Colin Chandler? A lot of that is just going to depend on the offseason development and who kind of takes that leap type thing. I'm wondering, am I forgetting any obvious, like, guys that could potentially be starters? Or that's just kind of where, so if I'm having to kind of predict right now on May 28th, I'm going, I would say Lowe, Colin Chandler, Otega Oweh, Diabate, Brandon Garrison would be the starting 5 for the Purdue game. For the first preseason game. That's what I would guess. Let me look at a roster.
And to just think,
there's 14 players. How am I supposed to remember? And to
just think, so what you just named, that would then mean your second unit is Denzel Aberdeen, Jasper Johnson, Trent Noah, Andrea Jelavic, and if JQ
Denzel Aberdeen did slip my mind there for a second, actually. So I don't know.
JQ is ready at that stage, but that's your 5th. Like, that is 2 winning teams in the SEC as your starting 5. So, like that,
and not counting the top 5 pick.
Right. There's kind of this narrative like, oh, platoon is bad. It was detrimental to, you know, Kentucky's recruiting efforts and all that. I get that, and it's true. And it won't be an explicit
it's going to be
system.
It's going to be a pretty like every
coming in waves. The way Mark Pope runs a modified, glorified, modern day platoon system, and you're going to see kind of hockey subs every once in a while. Maybe not every sub, but pretty darn often, to suggest that we have a first wave and a second wave, the same way we kind of thought of that platoon team. Again, like after Alex Poythress went down with his injury, it kind of became that anyway, where it was kind of like 4 in with one staying back, and then the next, where it wasn't like a just flat out 5 in, 5 out. We're going to get something similar this year, and maybe even to a greater extent, because we're not just 10 deep, we're 14 deep.
Yeah. Well, so
it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be very weird.
there was a point during the season last year where the rotations was like a big thing, like the substitution. So I remember I went through all the box score, all the stat broadcast box scores, and Steven will remember this. And I looked, all right, so when does the first substitution come in? The average throughout the whole season was around the 16:30 mark of the first half is where Pope makes changes. And he usually does 2 at a time. He had his interview with KSR last week with Matt Jones, where he basically said he loves to do that so he can have everyone get a feel of the game. You can manage your fatigue a little bit better. I know that was an issue last year. It's going to be able to get guys more comfortable as they rotate in. You're going to be able to learn faster who's ready for that game, like who's on for that game. So I think we're going to see the exact same thing this year. Like you just said, it's not going to be 4 or 5 guys at a time, but at the 16:30 mark, he's going to send 2 guys to the scorers table. 2 or 3 minutes later, he's going to send another 2 guys. 2 or 3 minutes later, he's going to send another 2 guys. Like, I think that's just probably going to be how he operates because he can. Unless one of these guys just kind of ends up being, far worse than we've projected, which we don't really have any reason to believe right now. That didn't happen last year. Like, the only disappointing player I think you could say from last year's team was Kerr, and the guy broke his foot 9 games into the season. So the rotations, I think, are going to be a lot of fun to watch because you're just going to see, especially late in games, like when there's 5 minutes left and nobody on Kentucky's team has played more than 20 minutes, and you've got whoever's on the other end, racing up and down on their 33rd, 34th minute. Like, that's going to matter as the season goes along. So the depth is huge, and the starting lineup doesn't necessarily matter too much. I think it matters more like who's going to be ending games, which my starting 5, and I did somehow forget Aberdeen when I was talking about the starting 5. I knew I was forgetting somebody. So I almost might be...
Well, and like we even like still Dre, can we stop forgetting Cam Williams? But that's kind of the point. Like I've said on this show that Cam Williams is going to have the same, like we talked about Otega Oweh as the sleeper kind of guy that's flying under the radar of last year's team. And then he ends up being the best player on the team and, the guy we're doing this show about right now. Like I have already talked about my love for Cam Williams and how good he's going to be. And it's kind of just driving the point home of, yes, we're now even talking about Cam Williams. Where does he slide in? Yeah, thank you for this, Steven. You have no idea how important this is. Like, again, Malachi Moreno, like we are now talking about him potentially when Jaden Quaintance gets healthy as the 3rd center, and then Reese Potter as the 4th center to slide in there as a 45% 3-point shooter coming from the MAC. Like, it's gonna be a really, really, really massive challenge for Pope to figure out this rotation.
Okay, well let's push ourselves. Let's say it's mid-February, everyone's healthy. It's an SEC game, tied with 2 minutes left. Who's the 5 on the floor, do you think? Right now, call your shot 8 months out from that scenario I just gave you.
For when are we talking?
Mid-February, everyone's healthy. Last 2 minutes of a tie game against an SEC team.
Oh, God. Oh, man. Okay. Got 2 obvious ones with
Jalen Lowe,
Otega Oweh.
Probably Quaintance at that point. If he's fully healthy.
Quaintance, Denzel Aberdeen,
and Diabate.
I think those are your 5. Yeah, I think in terms of guys I'm comfortable riding through the finish line, I think that's who Pope's going to roll with. But okay, Colin Chandler, he was that guy this past year where he was bombing 35-footers in NCAA tournament games.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough. I think the iron sharpening iron aspect of this roster is going to be, heart and soul of Cal era, like NBA, again, like 2014-15 team, where it was just like, you just got dude after dude after dude after dude that you just say, hey, you're going to play just as much as a starter, but you're not going to start for us because somebody's got to sit the bench. Sorry, dude. Okay, we're going to see it's going to 2014-15 is going to be the closest thing that we've seen to something like this.
Whew. I like when you say those words.
Yeah.
All right.
We haven't gotten your thoughts on Braden Hawthorne. Like that was kind of a guy who's flown under the radar because, again, somebody has to fly under the radar. He makes the very unexpected decision to sign with Kentucky. We talked about it on last week's show, but a very, kind of one of those decisions where he could have gone somewhere else and started. He could have gotten a lot more money from somewhere else. He comes to Kentucky because he grew up a diehard Kentucky fan and wants to he wants to smoke. He wants to just see what happens. I respect the fact that the coaching staff has not said like, you're redshirting and, see ya next spring. Like that's not the case with this kid. They're going to give him a chance. But again, as we saw the list of names ahead of us, he's got his work cut out for him if he wants to play. What did you think of that addition? And do you see any type of scenario for him to play this season?
I mean, I'm sure that I can whip up scenarios in my head where he plays. I think
none involving injuries. You're not allowed to even
that's
touch on that. You're not even allowed
place
to
where my
hint
mind goes. Both of our NBA teams just experienced just terrible stuff like this. I mean, we're not even going to speak it into the earth at that point. But with Braden, what I'll say about Braden is he did a 30-minute interview with one of his, I don't know if it was like a high school classmate or something like that, but like did kind of like a random 30-minute interview with someone that's close to him in West Virginia. And what I took away, I listened to the whole thing, and what I took from it was that kid is really smart. He's really smart. He knows what he's he knows what he's getting into. He knows what to say, when to say it. It's not like he's like super media trained like his answers are, but he's not like he's going to say the right thing because that's what he believes, or at least what I could tell from this 30-minute interview he had with just his classmate, who you could sit there and joke the whole time and laugh and whatever, but they both of them took it very seriously. And I came away from it thinking, okay, this kid has his head on straight. Like he knows that he's probably not going to play too much this season at Kentucky. Probably only going to come in like as the victory cigar type guy early on in like non-conference games. Like might get some run then if you're playing. Oh, shout out to Benny in the back there.
Hey,
I hope that's Benny, unless it's a stranger. So I don't like. He understands that his playing time is going to be very minimal, barring some catastrophe that happens. So he's doing all of this with that in mind. So I think he's a kid that's going to come in and just work his ass off really hard for an entire year. You don't want a situation where you develop him for a whole year and he just leaves or something like that, because the transfer portal just works like that. And I mean, anything is on the table at this point. But I think he's a kid that has a lot of potential. Someone said, I think maybe told Jacob Polachek, he was talking to someone close to Braden, that's like the kid's still growing. Like I think he's 6'9" and maybe still growing a little bit.
Pope said talked about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I've seen it from multiple places because I'm almost positive Jacob reported that as well. So that's the thing that they're kind of putting out there as well, that he's still growing. I think he's 6'8" right now, so he maybe can get up another 6'9", 6'10". Already has a crazy wingspan, so you can kind of see the vision with a player like him. But yeah, I don't think immediately you're expecting too much from that kid.
And I talked about this last week when we signed him. Like you're comparing his status as the 14th man to a Walker Horn or a Grant Derbyshire, where they were kind of scout team guys on last year's roster, where you relied on them to throw kind of wrenches out there, just different looks, throw different packages at it, whatever the case was. Now you're talking about him as kind of a glorified scout team kind of walk-on guy in practice, where even if worst case scenario he doesn't play a single minute for Kentucky this season and he hits the transfer portal this time next year, I don't expect that to happen. But if that is what we get out of the Braden Hawthorne experience, probably overpaying for what that is in a vacuum, but
not our money.
Not our money, first of all. But think of the unique looks that Braden Hawthorne can throw at you versus, and again, love Grant Derbyshire, love Walker Horn, love Zach Tao. But the different looks that a Braden Hawthorne can throw at you and a Reese Potter can throw at you, and some of these guys, Malachi Moreno is a McDonald's freaking All-American, as these end of bench, maybe not playing a whole lot year one, but guys that you develop internally and just use as these unique, like, hey, we're going up against like Grant Nelson was the example I gave last week. Unicorny, kind of like, how do you game plan for somebody like that when you don't have that type of player on your roster for scout team practice. Braden Hawthorne is that guy. Like Malachi Moreno is that guy. Reese Potter can be the catch and shoot, stretch 4, stretch 5 big that you throw out at scout team. But that's the value in overloading the bench, even if you know that somebody's got to sit the bench when the games actually play. It's not necessary. Again, like John Calipari used to throw that out there. Our practices are harder than the games are. That's kind of why you build a roster to this level. You want the practices, that iron sharpening iron in practice. You want it to be harder than the games are themselves. And I think that's exactly the way Mark Pope built this roster.
And as we were just kind of sitting here, fleshing that all out, I do see opportunities for him. Like, I think Pope is going to find ways to force feed him and Reese Potter and Malachi Moreno, especially if Quaintance, is out for however long he is. Like, it'll be easier to feed those bigs some extra minutes. So, but he was big. Some of it was injuries, like having to play Travis and Trent more. But I think those guys were going to play some sort of role, regardless of how all the injuries played out. Like, I think that those were guys that Pope really wanted to try and get in the mix and just get a feel for the game. So I do think we'll see some of that from Braden. I don't know how much. I don't know if it's, how much of it is just going to be against non-conference, bad non-conference teams late in games and stuff like that. So, but he's going to be fun. Like, I think he's going to be a really fun kid to just kind of talk to and interact with and meet. He's obviously really expanded his game over the last year. Like, we didn't even know it at the time, but we were watching the kid play back in February.
That is so hilarious.
We had no idea. And actually in that interview, he was talking about, he's like, Mark Pope was there. He's like, I was still committed to West Virginia at the time, but he's like, Mark Pope was the only head coach that was still kind of, because I think Jason Hart had recruited him before and all that. So there was a previous connection with Kentucky before he even picked West Virginia. And he noticed that Mark Pope was the only head coach that was at that game. I think Hubert Davis was there, and some other coaches, but not schools that were had been recruiting him in the past. So that was something that stood out to him. Obviously it's a little bit easier for Mark Pope to get to Versailles than I'm sure it is for DeVries to get from West Virginia, but even still, those little things matter. So, there's a reason I'm sure that Indiana was not part of his top 5 or whatever, and all that. So those relationships matter, and who knows? He could play 0 minutes all season long and be like, I loved all of this. I want to come back and do it again and prove myself at this level. So we'll see. It's fun when we can talk about the 14th man being a potential. Not necessarily an X factor, but what the hell is this guy? We're not talking about that with Walker Horn. Shout out who is one of these walk-ons coming back? I
have heard that Walker Horn will be back, but
okay. Shout out to Walker Horn. Yeah,
I've heard
that's a nice gig he's got.
Yeah, and I've heard that Grant probably Grant is going to be like an astrophysicist or something. He's the smartest kid. He's had a 4.0 his entire life. Kid is going to be a pro in anything he wants to be. So I think there's just kind of okay, the basketball thing was fun. Now it's time for me to show I'm a brilliant, whatever he wants to do in the future, he can be that. So love you, Grant Derbyshire. He's gonna have a bright future. Zach Tao, he's technically grandfathered in with this, if assuming the House settlement passes the way it's technically Grant is as well. If he does want to just, sit on the Kentucky bench for another year, if he chooses to do that. But the way the grandfather kind of clause will work with the House settlement is that all 3 of the walk-ons, if you had a roster spot before, you now have it again next season. So we could have as many as, if Pope could, he's not going to, but could add 1 more scholarship player and then bring back all 3 walk-ons and have 18 players in the locker room. But that's not happening. But pretty strong 15-man group, assuming that Walker Horn is your only other addition, returnee. However, do you think he's going to make an announcement? How is that going to work? He entered the portal. Is he going to be I am officially withdrawing from the portal? Time to continue my pursuit of number 9. What does that Walker Horn return announcement look like?
It better be the Wolf of Wall Street clip.
I'm leaving.
Yeah, just drop that one again. So I think that's the classic. So.
He should just quote tweet Otega's video with the same video.
By the way, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, don't forget about me over here. I'm coming back.
I would write that as its own post on KSR because
Absolutely.
Walker Horn, you deserve it, bud. Walker Horn, he's been through some stuff. You know,
You're
they
associated
have
with
a
Kentucky
story to
basketball.
tell. You know, like those walk-ons that kind of the carryovers from Coach Cal, like they should write their own like walk-on story, like walk on by
Walk,
Walker, Walker the walk-on,
take a walk with Walker.
yeah, his own like biography of or autobiography of his time at Kentucky through the coaching.
I would read
change and
it.
all that
It'd be
thing.
very interesting. Yeah, especially getting those 2 years with Cal.
Yeah.
2 years. Yeah, 2 years with Cal.
Yeah. He had 2 years with Cal, and then he came back.
Ooh, there we
junior
go.
and-
Steven's saying it. I think that's right.
I'll try to
Get him
work on that.
Get him on the show.
I'll try to work on that because he's got some stuff to say. I guarantee you he has some stuff to say. We can start wrapping this thing up. Again, I kind of feel bad because last year's show got really, really, really ridiculous at the end because it got to be like 1:30 a.m. Hadn't heard anything from Jaxson Robinson, so we're talking about like bench pressing Pat Kelsey and things like that.
I don't remember too much from that. I feel like I watched it, but like that's so much of a blur to me at this point.
Yeah, feel bad that we don't get the ridiculousness of that show. It's kind of like, again, it's like a matinee version of the late night sources say. But you know, when you get an all SEC player deciding to come back at 4:00 in the afternoon, you say, well, you know, tell me to jump and I'll say how far, or how high. So let's see. Any last second things we want to talk about? Will the hold on student visa hold up Jelavic from getting to the United States? Sure as hell hope not. Would really, really love for that not to be the case. I'm hoping that the fact that his situation kind of started before all of this, that he's been trying, like an applicant for a month plus now. He just did that Q&A where he talked about, you know, getting to America within the next week or two. It was my understanding on Kentucky side, he will be there in time for the like father-son camp that starts June 7th, I think, 8th, something like that. Okay. June 7th is father-son, father-daughter is June 8th. He is supposed to be on campus by then, so I'm assuming not, but really don't need that type of wrench. Fortunately, like the process, no matter worst case scenario, started so much earlier than Z's. Like Z commits in August and then like has to start that process, and that's how we get to, you know, there were some other things that happened behind the scenes that one day we'll share.
And I imagine
share that.
With the whole Superbet team, you know, he's got 3 of his teammates coming over too. Like, you have to think that all of them that's one collaborative effort between Superbet, the Adriatic League, Kentucky, the NCAA. Like, everyone's kind of working together there. And if Auburn's going to sign a guy today, you know, you would have to think that they're also like, okay, we feel pretty good that that guy's going to get cleared, which if you're just connecting dots, like if he's going to get cleared, Yelovich is probably going to get cleared too. So,
and I'd say, I haven't heard anything to suggest there's any type of concern whatsoever. If these other coaches, again, like Illinois will not have a basketball team if
their entire team is made of Adriatic kids
of itches. It's the all-time itch all-stars.
It's the Balkan Five is what
Balkan superstars. So Illinois has to field a roster.
Yeah. Orlando Antigua knows, he's been through this. Like, he knows what's going on.
Could you imagine if like this unfolds the way, like worst case scenario where these guys aren't able to get student visas and it's like, Illinois does not have a basketball team this year. Sorry about your luck, but it's not going to work out for the Fighting Illini this year. Maybe next year.
Yeah, you have to think that they've covered all their, you know, they've covered their ass on all that. You'd have to think they understand what the process is, and they probably all feel very confident about it, which in turn should make Kentucky and all of us feel confident about it. So yeah, I think his international season just wrapped up as well. So I think I don't think he's even done I think he's done playing basketball.
There we go. We'd love to hear it. Folks, I already told you Steven's getting fired if we don't get to 50,000 by the end of the month. Yeah, I will fire him personally. Zach and I are going to hold a conference call by the end of the day. If however many of you guys are on this podcast right now, if you guys don't subscribe, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let Steven go. Appreciate all of his efforts, but you know, just unfortunately it wasn't good enough. We couldn't get to 50,000 in time. Any last any last second thoughts we want to get off our chest in this celebratory welcome back Otega Oweh show?
No, I've been sitting here trying to think of other things that I wanted to talk about with Otega. I'm I don't know. I mean, he's just gonna be a lot of fun to watch. Like he was
Like,
so much
what
fun
a
to watch last
like
year.
what a luxury to like just be able to just talk about like, oh yeah, we get an all SEC player back, you know, going to be the face of college basketball next year, you know, no big deal. Like just an afterthought, like an expectation at this point, like, yeah, he was assumed to be back. Like why would we expect anything otherwise? What a healthy program. Like the state of the program right now is so unbelievably healthy. And we just got an A grade. Mark Pope got an A grade from ESPN's Myron Metcalf, given SEC coaching grades, gave him one of like 8 coaches in the league that got an A grade. So what do you think about that, Zach?
What I think is the SEC was really good last year because he gave 7 of those teams A grades. It was either you were an A or a B or a D, which I thought was funny. Like there was no
you
no
know
middle
who
of the
you
road
are
team.
if you got a D.
I thought it was funny he put Texas in the D spot. They still made the NCAA tournament, but yeah, they had kind of a down year for I guess what the expectations were. But on that note, I think one other thing I will add is the SEC early in the offseason, I felt like they were going to maybe take a dip. I don't think they're going to get 14 teams in the NCAA tournament again, but I think they're going to be top heavy. I think there's going to be like you get Tahad, Pettiford, like Pettiford and Oweh are probably going to be the 2 front runners for preseason SEC Player of the Year. I'm sure I'm forgetting other guys out there, but
yeah, there's no reason that Otega Oweh should not be preseason SEC Player of the Year. There's no way.
Yeah.
Like Tahad is a good player, but you
like Tahad.
the leading scorer from Kentucky as one of the best teams in college basketball all season long last year coming back. You know, Tahad was very good with caveats of like for a freshman, for what his role was at Auburn, for a dominant team top to bottom that was surrounded by talent. He was one of many guys. Like Otega was the face of Kentucky last season and he's coming back. Like there's no excuse
like
for him.
Florida's like Alex Condon's really good. That guy's going to come back. He'll be a preseason SEC guy. Like so, you've got like at Florida there. So I'm talking about. So there's going to be some really. I think the talent's going to be probably deeper than we maybe initially thought throughout the SEC. I think the bad teams are going to be bad though. Like there will be some really stinky teams over there.
All-time terrible take. Just
Pooh Bear, come on.
A guy who just absolutely sorry, Pooh Bear,
the plug,
butt plug. Yeah, not.
Hey, we're benching Pat Kelsey's now, baby. Come on.
Whatever. All right. I don't even know how to transition out of that.
No, Carter Knox is fine, but he's not half as good as Otega Oweh is. Come on.
We addressed the Otega having long hair in the announcement video to return.
Yeah.
Very sus, if you ask me, Otega. Very, very, very sus. We already talked about Steven getting fired. Shout out Joseph, the horror guy, was there from day one. He from minute 1 of this show, and he needs to go outside and hoop. Yes, hey. I agree. Oweh will do great again next season.
Do we get another buzzer beater, another game winner from Otega this year, do you think?
It was kind of ironic that he waited for the buzzer of the draft withdrawal deadline to announce his return. Like I feel like it was pretty on brand for Otega, the buzzer beater champion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited to watch him. So it's really fun to watch because you get 4 guys back from last season's team, all of them playing important roles. So it's going to be really fun to kind of see how those guys progress because we really don't not to that level. You don't see 4 like rotation guys come back at Kentucky, at least like not over the last however many years. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just short-sighted memory on that one, but it definitely feels like it's going to be really fun to see how those 4 guys in particular progress and what the leap looks like, and is the Mark Pope year 2 thing real? Like we've seen it, we saw it with Jaxson Robinson last year, and that was with a different team technically. So it's going to be awesome.
Houston, Purdue, UConn, and UK are the top 4 teams. I feel like I could swap UConn with Florida, probably, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a very top-heavy year. Like I don't feel like it's going to be 25 teams of just like, holy crap. Any given night,
Michigan's going to be good too.
Yeah, Michigan's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's going to be very, very top-heavy. And
really
I'm
good teams.
Very glad that Kentucky is in that conversation. Just very, UConn belonging, Florida belonging. Michigan belonging, but that top 7 or 8 group is going to be,
Louisville?
absolute.
Arkansas?
No, they're tiers below, as they shed tears when Kentucky kicks their ass this year. All right, we're ready to wrap this thing up. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money, 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations to special events. Shout out Brandon Garrison Ice Cream Day. Awesome. Very, very
soon,
cool that he's doing that. Meet and greets with UK athletes. Again, ice cream with Brandon Garrison among them with Club Blue for kids. Signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. I got a bridge in Brooklyn. I'd sell Pilgrim cheap. That's not very nice. Whatever. Zach, this is a lot of fun, man. I'm glad we had a reason to celebrate this, but I appreciate you hopping on and celebrating Otega Oweh's return with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. Shout out to Charlie, I think it was.
Charlie.
Hit us with our...
Yeah, Charlie. Shout out Charlie.
Charlie.
Charles Mignard.
Charles.
Yeah.
Charles.
Shout out. Zach, tell fans where they can find your work.
You can find me, as always, on KentuckySportsRadio.com, or you can follow me on social media, Twitter, X, at TheGagan, KSR. Gagan is GeoGheGan, triple G.
Triple G's. Find my work at KentuckySportsRadio.com, Twitter, at Jack Pilgrim, KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Again, if you do not subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, Steven will get fired, and nobody wants to see that. So like, subscribe, comment, all those things. Appreciate everybody that joined us today in this matinee edition of the Sources Say podcast, celebrating one Otega Oweh's return to Kentucky. We will see you next time. Go Cats.